Hey guys, tonight, the Sleepless Wings invites you to imagine a sky not ruled by one blazing sun, but by two. Picture dawn breaking with twin stars rising together, casting double shadows across the mountains, painting the oceans in shimmering layers of gold and red, and filling the night with a softer twilight that never fully fades. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. If Earth had two suns, everything about our existence would be different. The warmth we feel, the seasons we know, even the very rhythm of life would be transformed. Two suns would mean two sources of gravity, two patterns of light and heat, two competing centers around which our planet must balance. It would not just be a change in the sky, it would be a change in the foundation of everything we call home. Astrophysicists call such systems binary stars, and they're far from rare. In fact, most stars in our galaxy live in pairs, or even in clusters. Our single sun is the exception, not the rule, which makes us wonder, if Earth had been born in a binary system, what would life look like? Would it even be possible? Imagine the daily sky. Instead of sunrise followed by nightfall, the dance of two suns would stretch daylight in strange, unfamiliar rhythms. Sometimes they would rise together, flooding the world with searing brilliance. Other times, one might set as the other climbed higher, leaving a constant twilight, never quite day, never quite night. Shadows would split into two, stretching in opposite directions. Darkness would become rare, stars in the night sky faint and fleeting. The very idea of sleep, of circadian rhythms, would be challenged by the persistence of light. Plants, too, would change. Photosynthesis depends on cycles of day and night, light and shadow. Two suns might supercharge growth during long periods of double light, while disrupting the delicate balance of rest. Forests could be denser, deserts hotter, polar regions far warmer. The equator might become an oven, uninhabitable, while life thrived in zones where the sun's patterns created gentler climates. And then there is gravity. Two stars do not sit still. They orbit each other, tugging at their shared center of mass. Earth would be caught in this gravitational dance. Our orbit might wobble wildly, sometimes closer to one sun, sometimes farther, leading to extreme seasons, violent shifts in climate, and periods of instability that could challenge the very survival of life. Only in special orbital patterns, called stable zones, could Earth find balance. Outside those zones, chaos would reign. But if balance were found, life could adapt. Evolution has always worked with what it is given. Creatures might evolve to endure longer days, to thrive in perpetual twilight, to shelter from the intensity of twin noon. Entire ecosystems could emerge shaped not by a single sun, but by the rhythm of two. Human culture, too, would be transformed. Calendars would be complex, tracking the dance of both stars. Festivals might celebrate the rare moments when the suns aligned or eclipsed one another, casting strange shadows across the land. Our art, our poetry, even our sense of time itself would be richer and stranger. And yet, in this imagined world, questions remain. Would civilization even rise under skies that never truly darken? Would we dream the same way, rest the same way, create stories in the same way? Or would constant light change the very fabric of consciousness, leaving humanity forever different from what we are now. As you drift with these thoughts, let the image linger: a horizon with two suns rising together, their light folding over oceans, their warmth shaping a world unlike our own. It is a reminder that the universe is vast, that other skies exist, and that our own Earth, bathed in the glow of one solitary sun, is already a rare and fragile gift. Binary stars are not rare curiosities. They are the rule, not the exception. When we look up at the night sky, most of the points of light we see are not single stars, like our sun, but pairs. Two stars orbiting a common center, bound together by gravity in a cosmic dance that can last billions of years. Some are close, whirling tightly around one another, while others drift far apart, companions across vast gulfs of space. For a planet, existing within such a system is both possibility and peril. Astronomers describe two main orbital patterns where a planet might survive. The first is called a circumbinary orbit, where the planet circles around both stars at once, like a dancer keeping distance from two partners moving together. The second is a circumstellar orbit, where the planet orbits just one star, while the second star revolves much farther away. In both cases, balance is delicate. Too close to one star, and the pull of the other tears stability apart. Too far, and the orbit decays into chaos. Imagine Earth in a circumbinary orbit. Our world would circle both suns, caught in their combined gravity. Seasons would not follow the simple rhythm of one star's path, but would shift with the changing distance between the two. When the stars moved closer together, Earth might bathe in double heat, oceans steaming, deserts spreading. When they drifted apart, the light might dim, plunging parts of the world into chill. Climate would not simply be warm or cold, it would be turbulent, swinging in rhythms far stranger than our familiar year. In a circumstellar orbit, Earth would cling to one sun as its primary anchor, with the second as a distant companion. Here, life might be more stable, though still influenced by the secondary star's gravity and radiation. Nights might glow faintly with reflected light, and eclipses would be far more frequent, moments when one sun crossed before the other, casting surreal patterns across the sky. The possibility of life in such systems fascinates scientists. Could biology endure the constant flux? Models suggest it could. Life is astonishingly adaptable. In regions where the balance of heat and light remains within the habitable zone, organisms might thrive, albeit in forms unfamiliar to us. Perhaps forests would grow with leaves designed to deflect excess radiation. Perhaps animals would evolve to hide during times of searing double light and emerge in the softer glow when the sun's positions gave brief respite. And what of us, humans? In such a world, our very concept of time would shift. A day might not be defined by one sun, rising and setting, but by the interplay of two, their cycles weaving together in patterns far more complex. Sleep, work, and rhythm of life might never align neatly. Societies would have to adapt, marking calendars not by the passage of a single sun, but by the dance of two. Imagine the cultural richness of stories born from this: dual deities of fire, twin myths of creation, epics written in the shifting skies. Yet even as we imagine this, we sense the fragility. Binary systems are not always kind to planets. Orbits can destabilize over millions of years, casting worlds into frozen exile or fiery destruction. The harmony that sustains life in such places is precarious, dependent on precise alignments and cosmic patience. Earth, with its single steady sun, is unusual not because it is ordinary, but because it is stable. Still, there is beauty in the thought. To look up and see two suns crossing paths, their light blending into new colors across the horizon, would be to live in a world where the sky itself was alive with motion. For some, this might feel overwhelming. For others, it would be inspiring, a daily reminder that existence is fragile, yet wondrous. If you could choose, would you want to live on an earth with two suns, brilliant, unpredictable, breathtaking, or remain with the steady glow of one? Share your thought. It's a small question, but in your answer lies a glimpse of how we value stability, how we balance awe with comfort, how we imagine the skies that could have been. Life on Earth is guided by rhythm. The rising and setting of the sun dictates when flowers open and close, when birds sing, when humans rest. Even deep within us, cells carry molecular clocks, tiny gears of chemistry that keep time with the turning of the world. These circadian rhythms are so ancient that they exist in nearly all forms of life. Without them, balance unravels. Now imagine a planet lit by two suns. Light would come not in simple alternation, but in overlapping cycles. Sometimes one sun alone, sometimes both together, sometimes neither, depending on their orbits. Darkness, if it came at all, would be fleeting and uncertain. The certainty that has shaped life for billions of years would dissolve into a pattern far more complex. Plants would be the first to feel the change. Photosynthesis relies not just on light, but on rest. Periods when energy is stored, cells repaired, growth prepared. With two suns, days might stretch unbearably long, sometimes lasting weeks or months without true night. Forests might evolve reflective leaves to shed excess heat or develop pigments that block harmful rays. Some plants could shift into dormancy during double bright seasons, saving their strength for calmer intervals. Others might embrace the excess, growing vast and dense in ways unimaginable on our single sun Earth. Animals, too, would adapt in strange ways. Nocturnal creatures may struggle, forced to retreat into caves or burrows where shadow still exists. Their eyes might evolve to handle constant twilight rather than true darkness. Diurnal creatures might face new pressures, learning to regulate activity not by nightfall, but by cooler intervals when the suns align to create softer light. Insects could time their swarms not by sunset, but by fluctuations in brightness. The very meaning of day and night would dissolve, replaced by cycles unique to each species' survival. For humans, the impact would be profound. Our bodies crave rhythm, yet in a world of double suns, sleep might be fragmented, irregular. Perhaps cultures would adapt by creating artificial darkness, shields, shelters, or structures designed to block the endless light. Homes might be built with thick walls, curtains not to keep out cold, but to keep out brilliance. Religion and myth would reflect this tension, elevating darkness itself to something sacred, a gift to be sought and preserved. Even the psychology of such a world would differ. Darkness, on our earth, carries mystery and fear, but also rest and intimacy. In a two-sun world, true night would be rare, and with it, the chance for dreams. What would poetry look like in a culture where the stars are almost always hidden, the constellations erased by constant glow? Would people long for darkness as we long for light in winter? Would stories be written not about the fire of the suns, but about the quiet miracle of shadow? Evolution, as always, would find a way. Creatures might develop skins resistant to radiation, eyes with layered filters, metabolisms tuned to unpredictable cycles. Intelligence might arise differently, shaped by the need to manage constant flux. Perhaps instead of measuring life by a 24-hour day, they would measure it by the alignment of stars, building societies attuned to celestial geometry rather than sunrise and sunset. It is possible that such a world would breed resilience. To survive in conditions that change endlessly would require adaptability, creativity, and cooperation. Civilizations might value flexibility above stability, fluidity above permanence. Their wisdom could be one of cycles, not certainties, teaching that nothing endures in the same form for long. And yet, the longing for rhythm would remain. Even in our world, where the sun rises predictably, we create calendars, rituals, and ceremonies to mark time. On a planet of two suns, the need for order might be stronger still. Music, art, and architecture could all become ways of grounding existence in the face of a sky that refuses to rest. Pause for a moment and imagine standing under that sky. Two shadows stretch from your feet, sometimes merging, sometimes pulling apart. Light shifts constantly, painting the world in hues of gold and crimson, silver and fire. It is beautiful, overwhelming, unending. Would you feel wonder or exhaustion, or perhaps both at once? The awe of possibility bound together with the yearning for quiet dark. If this thought stirs something in you, share it. Your reflection is like a candle lit under two suns, small but steady, a reminder that life always finds its rhythm, no matter how strange the sky. Culture grows from the sky we live beneath. On our earth, the steady cycle of one sun rising and setting shaped calendars, rituals, and stories. The rhythm of day and night became the foundation for religion, agriculture, and art. But imagine a world where two suns ruled the heavens. The very fabric of culture would be rewoven in their double light. Myth would begin with creation itself. Instead of a single divine fire, there would be twin forces, two celestial beings locked in eternal dance. Some traditions might see them as siblings, bringing balance and rivalry. Others might tell of lovers, forever circling one another, their union giving birth to life below. Still others might cast one as benevolent and the other as harsh, a duality of nurture and challenge, woven into every harvest, every storm. The dual suns would not just be celestial bodies, they would be deities, the center of imagination and faith. Rituals would follow their movements. Festivals could be timed not by a single solstice, but by the rare alignments when the suns crossed paths, creating eclipses of layered brilliance. Villages might gather to watch as one sun swallowed the other, interpreting it as a cosmic marriage or battle. Temples would be built with twin doorways of light, capturing the moment when both suns poured through in harmony. Priests and storytellers would interpret these patterns, weaving them into prophecy and guidance for daily life. Art, too, would bear their mark. Painters might fill walls with skies of double shadows. Sculptors carve figures with two faces. Poets craft verses about light that never fades. Music might be composed in layered rhythms, echoing the overlapping cycles of the suns. Even architecture would reflect duality. Houses designed with windows, angled to capture different rays. cities planned around the geometry of twin horizons. Where our culture celebrates the contrast of light and dark, theirs would celebrate the endless play of layered brilliance. Psychology would shift as well. On Earth, night provides rest, a boundary between labor and dream. It creates intimacy, mystery, a rhythm of withdrawal and renewal. On a two-sun Earth, where true darkness is rare, people might long for shadow. Darkness itself could become sacred, associated with a secrecy, reflection, or love. Curtains and shelters would not only protect from heat, but create rare pockets of night, places where imagination could bloom away from the ever-watchful skies. Dreams would take on special meaning. In a world where light dominates, sleep and dream might feel like rebellion, like a private descent into mystery denied by the heavens. Stories of visionaries could revolve around those who dream deeply despite constant light, seeing in darkness what others cannot. Darkness would not be feared, as in many of our myths, but revered, a fleeting treasure more precious than gold. Even memory would be shaped differently. Collective memory relies on cycles, harvests, years, generations. But with two suns, those cycles would be harder to measure. Cultures might turn to geometry, mapping time by the shifting patterns of dual shadows. Generations would tell stories of when the suns were close, of when they drifted apart, embedding cosmic rhythms into identity. To remember would be to carry not just personal history, but the vast choreography of the sky. Philosophy, too, would bloom in new directions, where we ponder unity and duality in abstract terms. Their world would live it daily. The idea that truth has two faces, that balance requires tension, would be obvious to them. Their wisdom traditions might teach that existence is not either or, but both, and a lesson written across the heavens each morning. Yet alongside awe would come unease. Two suns mean unpredictability, storms of heat, shifting climates, strange eclipses. In response, cultures might carry both reverence and fear. Where we speak of the sun as a giver of life, they would speak of the suns as both giver and taker, capable of blessing and destruction. Their prayers would not only ask for light, but also for restraint. Imagine yourself living beneath that sky. At dawn, not one but two orbs rise, painting the land in crimson and gold. Their light fills every corner, their presence shaping every thought. Stories, songs, rituals, all are born from their dance. To be human in such a world is to be forever conscious of the heavens, to see in the sky not emptiness, but a drama written in fire. As you sit with this image, ask yourself, what would you revere if darkness were rare? Would you find the sacred in shadow, in silence, in the hidden? Share that thought if it lingers. It is in such reflections that we glimpse how skies shape souls, and how light itself becomes memory. Climate is the silent architect of life. On our Earth, one sun warms the oceans, drives the winds, and powers the great cycles of water and carbon. Seasons emerge from a gentle tilt of the planet, shaping migrations, harvests, and survival itself. But with two suns, this architecture would change in profound and unpredictable ways. The first difference would be heat. Two stars mean more energy pouring onto the planet's surface. If their combined warmth was even slightly greater than our single sun, the ice caps might vanish entirely. The poles would not be frozen wildernesses, but temperate seas. Glaciers would retreat into memory, and coastlines as we know them would drown beneath rising oceans. Vast areas of today's Earth, New York, London, Shanghai, would lie underwater. Instead, shallow inland seas might dominate, rich in marine life, but hostile to old notions of stability. The oceans themselves would churn differently. Heat drives currents, and with double suns the engine would be stronger, perhaps violent. Imagine colossal storms sweeping across hemispheres. Fueled by endless energy, hurricanes might grow not once a year but continually, circling the equator in relentless procession. For some regions, life would be impossible, too hot, too storm-torn. For others, constant warmth would bring lush abundance, jungles thriving where deserts once stood. Rainfall, too, would shift. With more heat comes more evaporation, more clouds, more cycles of storm and flood. Some regions might drown under ceaseless monsoons, while others, paradoxically, dry out if the sun's angles pushed clouds away. Agriculture, if it arose, would be less about planting by season and more about adapting to constant flux. Farmers might learn to grow crops that withstand extremes, heat-resistant grains, water-storing fruits. Civilization itself would bend to the rhythm of weather written by two fires in the sky. The atmosphere would bear scars of this intensity. More energy means stronger winds, higher temperatures, and wider swings between extremes. Lightning would be more frequent, storms more violent, and auroras more dazzling, as solar winds from two stars streamed into Earth's magnetic shield. The skies might be alive with constant motion, an endless theater of power and color. Beautiful, yes, but also dangerous. And yet, balance is possible. Not all binary stars scorch their planets. If the suns were small, cooler, or distant, their combined energy might only slightly exceed our current conditions. In such a case, the world might resemble a greenhouse Earth, warmer seas, expanded tropics, but still habitable. Coral reefs could stretch far beyond the equator. Polar bears might never evolve, and migratory patterns would look nothing like ours. Entire ecosystems would rise and fall in response to the twin suns' cycles. Consider forests. Under two suns, light would be abundant. Trees might grow taller, faster, their canopies dense, with reflective leaves to shield from excess radiation. Flowers could bloom in spectacular bursts, triggered not by spring, but by rare alignments of the suns. When temperatures dipped enough for reprieve, insects might swarm in synchronized rhythms with these cycles, creating brief seasons of pollination and abundance. Life would not vanish, it would diversify in unexpected ways. Humans, if they emerged, would adapt as well. Clothing, shelter, and food would all be responses to heat and unpredictability. Cities might cluster near oceans, where breezes softened extremes, or in caves and shaded valleys. Architecture would focus not on height, but on shade. Broad canopies, reflective surfaces, underground chambers. Daily life would revolve around managing energy, conserving water, and timing activity to the shifting rhythms of climate. Psychologically, the environment would shape values. Societies might emphasize resilience, teaching children to endure storms and scarcity. Rituals could honor the return of cooler seasons, celebrating rare intervals of calm. Even the idea of paradise might shift, not to gardens of endless sun, but to oases of shadow and gentle air. Of course, danger would always lurk. Two suns mean greater chance of solar flares, bursts of radiation that could strip atmospheres or damage life. Without strong magnetic protection, Earth might struggle to shield itself. If our world survived such tempests, cultures would surely weave them into myth. Days when the heavens blazed too fiercely, punishing or cleansing the world below. Pause here and imagine standing at the edge of a vast inland sea, waves rolling beneath two setting suns. The air is heavy with warmth, storms brewing on the horizon, yet the water glitters with beauty. It is a world harsher than ours, less forgiving, but also alive in ways we can only dream. If you could walk that shoreline, would you see danger, or would you see wonder? Share your thought, for in how we answer lies the heart of our relationship to Earth. Whether with one sun or two, life adapts. That is its oldest truth. Across billions of years, organisms on Earth have reshaped themselves in response to shifting oceans, volcanic fire, ice ages, and mass extinctions. If our world had been born under two suns, evolution would have unfolded differently. Still creative, still relentless, but guided by patterns of light and heat unknown to us. Begin with plants. With two suns, light would be abundant, sometimes overwhelming. Photosynthesis would be supercharged, yet risky, for too much radiation can scorch rather than sustain. Forests might evolve leaves, with reflective surfaces shimmering like mirrors to scatter excess light. Pigments could deepen into reds and purples, shielding tissues from ultraviolet rays, while creating landscapes more vivid than any we know. Fields of scarlet grass, violet vines winding up silver trunks. Color would not only be beauty, but survival. Growth cycles would change too. Instead of flowering by the arrival of spring, plants might bloom when the sun's alignments softened the climate, creating rare intervals of gentler heat. Some species could evolve to hoard energy during searing double light, then erupt explosively when conditions eased, painting the world with sudden abundance. Others might adapt to the perpetual twilight, spreading wide leaves to catch every flicker of dimmer light when one sun sank below the horizon. Animals, in turn, would follow. Eyes would be different. Under twin suns, glare would be constant, shadows confusing. Evolution might favor multi-layered eyes, filters within filters, lenses that adjust to intensity. Some creatures could develop reflective membranes, like cats, not for darkness, but to scatter brightness. Others might see beyond visible light, into infrared or ultraviolet, turning the chaos of double illumination into hidden order. Behavior would adapt as well. Burrowing species might dominate, escaping into soil during searing heat, surfacing in cooler hours. Flighted creatures could thrive, chasing moving bands of shade across the land. Predators might hunt not by nightfall, but during the rare hours when one sun dipped low, using twilight to stalk prey exhausted by light. The rhythm of existence would be not day versus night, but flare versus reprieve. Even physiology could shift. To endure extremes, animals might evolve reflective fur, heat-dissipating fins, or skin that shifts color like living sunscreen. Cold-blooded species might flourish, basking in abundance, while warm-blooded ones struggled. Or perhaps intelligence itself would emerge differently. Creatures whose survival required constant planning, timing, and adaptation. Humans, or beings like us, would be profoundly shaped. Sleep would be irregular, split into shorter cycles, influencing cognition and memory. Cultures might embrace polyphasic rest, living in constant cycles rather than long nights. Skin tones could evolve across a dazzling spectrum, optimized for protection against radiation. Clothing might originate not for warmth, but for shade. Wide hats, layered veils, reflective garments woven into identity itself. And what of intelligence? Survival in such a world would require acute awareness of cycles. Communities might measure time not in hours or seasons, but in celestial alignments, passing down knowledge of when heat would intensify or storms arrive. Memory would be precious, myth inseparable from survival. Intelligence could bloom not only as curiosity, but as necessity, as adaptation to a sky that never rests. Consider, too, the possibility of oceans teeming with life, with warmer seas and stronger currents. Marine ecosystems could be vast and strange. Coral reefs glowing in purples and golds. Fish with reflective scales shining like liquid mirrors. Deep sea creatures rising closer to the surface during cooler intervals. Entire food chains would pulse with the sun's rhythms, creating ecosystems unlike anything we know. Yet diversity would not mean comfort. Extinction could be frequent, driven by unstable climates and bursts of radiation. Species would come and go quickly, flourishing when conditions aligned, vanishing when they shifted. Evolution would favor resilience over permanence, adaptability over specialization. The biosphere itself would feel restless, alive with constant change. And still, beauty would endure. Picture walking through a twilight forest under twin suns, the trees glowing with reflective leaves, insects shimmering like jewels, shadows layered and moving as though alive. Imagine gazing into an ocean of molten color, life glittering beneath waves stirred by endless energy. Such a world might be harsh, but it would also be wondrous. Life refusing to surrender, turning challenge into form, survival into art. If you could glimpse that earth, would you see chaos or creativity? Share your vision. In imagining it, we glimpse the boundless inventiveness of life, and we remember that survival is never just endurance, it is transformation. For most of human history, the night sky has been our first library. In its silence, we read patterns of stars, traced the paths of planets, and measured the passage of time. Navigation, myth, and science were born from this canvas of darkness. But what if darkness itself was rare? On an earth with two suns, the sky we know would vanish, and with it, much of the story we have written upon the stars. Consider the simplest change. True night would almost never come. With two suns in orbit, at least one might still be above the horizon, casting light across the land. Even when both sank, their combined glow could linger long after, washing the sky in twilight, where we now see billions of stars stretching across the Milky Way. They might see only a faint scattering, occasional pinpricks swallowed by perpetual glow. The constellations that guided sailors and storytellers alike might never be known. This loss would reshape science itself. Without visible stars, early civilizations might never imagine the universe as vast. The sense of infinity, born from gazing into the abyss of night, could be muted. Myth might place greater focus on the suns themselves, fiery deities locked in eternal motion, while the heavens beyond would remain mysterious, unseen. Astronomy, as we know it, might arrive far later, dependent on tools that pierce light rather than eyes lifted in wonder. Yet even in such a world, curiosity would find a way. The rare moments when both suns dipped below the horizon, creating fleeting darkness, would be treasured. People might gather in valleys, shielded from glow, to glimpse faint stars. These nights could become sacred, celebrated as windows into eternity. A child who glimpsed the Milky Way on such a night might grow to be a prophet, a scientist, or a poet, carrying the memory of hidden infinity into culture. Navigation would change too. On our Earth, travelers followed Polaris, the North Star, and mapped journeys by constellations. In a two-sun world, with stars dimmed, navigation might rely more on the suns themselves, their shifting alignments becoming a compass. Calendars would be complex, based on cycles not of one star, but of two, weaving geometry into the fabric of timekeeping. Art and philosophy would follow. Where our poets speak of starlight, theirs would speak of endless glow. Where we wonder about galaxies, they would wonder about shadow. Their word for mystery might not mean darkness, but the rare interval when darkness appears. In their imagination, the unknown would not lie above in the stars, but within, the inner worlds of dream and silence. Science, once it emerged, would face new challenges. Telescopes would struggle against the constant glare. Observatories might be built deep underground or beneath oceans, shielded from light, seeking glimpses of cosmic truth. Entire fields of astronomy could be delayed centuries, discovered only when technology overcame the tyranny of brightness. And yet, when it came, their discoveries would carry even greater weight, revealing a universe they had long suspected but rarely seen. Imagine the awe of such a moment. For generations, the sky had been filled with two suns, their glow blinding the heavens beyond. Then, through lenses and mirrors, a civilization finally pierces the glare, and galaxies bloom before them. They would discover that their suns were not the only ones, that countless others filled the cosmos. The revelation would be overwhelming, perhaps even spiritual, changing forever how they understood their place. Even our sense of romance would shift. On Earth, lovers looked to stars as metaphors of distance, eternity, longing. On a two-sun Earth, love might be spoken of as fire, two flames circling, two lights sharing one sky. Their lullabies might not promise starlight, but the rare gift of shadow, the intimacy of darkness stolen from endless day. Pause and picture yourself beneath such a sky. Two suns crossing paths, their light blending into crimson and gold. The horizon alive with brilliance, stars erased from sight. Do you feel loss, missing the infinity of night? Or do you feel wonder, standing in a world where the ordinary sky itself is a marvel? If this reflection lingers, share it. Your thought is a reminder that what we see above us shapes not only our science, but our souls. Civilization is not only stone and story, it is rhythm. On our Earth, life is divided cleanly, day for labor, night for rest. This cycle is so fundamental that it shapes every structure of society, from farming and trade to art, worship, and dream. But in a world with two suns, the rhythm would splinter, forcing humanity to invent new ways of living. Imagine a village beneath twin suns. The people rise not at sunrise, for sunrise is constant, but at intervals when the light softens, when one sun dips low, or both align to create brief respite. Work is done in fragments scattered across the shifting sky. Rest comes not in one long night, but in shorter pauses, carved out wherever shadow can be found. Homes are designed with thick walls, layered curtains, and shaded courtyards, not for privacy, but for survival. Shade is wealth. Darkness is luxury. Agriculture would change profoundly. Farmers on Earth follow seasons marked by the tilt of the planet. In a two-sun world, seasons might stretch into extremes, long intervals of blistering light, followed by cooler cycles when the suns drift apart. Crops would be chosen not for uniform growth, but for resilience, planted in waves to hedge against sudden shifts. Granaries would be sacred, for famine would always loom when the suns burned too close together. Trade, too, would adapt. Journeys would be timed with celestial cycles, merchants departing when heat was bearable and storms less fierce. Caravans might travel at twilight, not by nightfall, carrying goods along routes mapped not by constellations, but by the geometry of suns. Markets would bloom at cooler intervals, bustling festivals of exchange when conditions allowed. Religion would hold great influence. Priests would interpret the patterns of light, predicting when reprieve would come, guiding planting, travel, and rest. Myths of dual suns as rivals or lovers would frame every aspect of culture. In times of famine, rituals might beg for mercy, asking one sun to dim, the other to relent. In times of abundance, festivals would erupt in gratitude, celebrating the rare harmony of fire above. Architecture would be a testament to adaptation. Cities might grow underground, carved into stone, safe from radiation and heat. Above ground, walls would gleam white, domes reflecting brilliance, streets winding narrow to create corridors of shade. Towers might hold vast canopies, not to touch the heavens, but to shield from them. Where our cities reach upward, theirs would reach inward, seeking coolness and shadow. Even daily labor would carry new rhythms. Instead of long workdays, followed by long nights, people would labor in shorter bursts, resting often, conserving energy. Sleep would be polyphasic, taken in fragments woven into the fabric of life. Children might nap several times a day. Elders rise and rest at odd hours. Communities gathering whenever intervals of softer light aligned. Over time, society itself would adapt, not to a shared clock, but to a shared flexibility. Psychology would follow. On Earth, night gives us intimacy, reflection, and dream. Without it, longing for darkness might become part of the human soul. Artists could paint shadows as symbols of beauty. Poets write verses praising coolness and silence. Love might blossom not under moonlight, but in chambers of shade. Gifts exchanged not as jewels of gold, but as patches of darkness carved into the endless day. Conflict would arise too. Access to shade, water, and fertile land would be power. Nations might rise and fall based not on conquest, but on who could command the rarest resource, relief. Wars could erupt over rivers, cooled by geography, valleys hidden from glare, or caves deep enough for rest. Just as oil shaped our modern age, shadow might shape theirs. Yet cooperation would also flourish. Survival under two suns requires resilience, and resilience is often collective. Communities might band together, sharing shade, pooling harvests, creating elaborate rituals of generosity. Hospitality could become sacred, to offer shelter from light, water from storage, or a place to rest might be the highest virtue. And what of art? Songs might carry layered rhythms, echoing the interplay of two suns. Dance could mimic the circling of fire above. Bodies weaving in patterns of dual motion, stories would be filled with metaphors of balance, harmony, and rivalry. Two forces forever intertwined. Where our myths speak of light and dark, theirs would speak of greater and lesser light, of the yearning for shadow, of the gift of coolness in a world that refuses to dim. Pause and picture yourself walking through such a city. Streets curve beneath canopies, courtyards bloom with reflective pools, families rest in darkened chambers while outside the sky blazes with twin fire. It is not our world, but it is possible. Humanity reshaped, yet still human, still dreaming, still building lives beneath whatever sky they are given. If you lived there, would you thrive in the brilliance? Or would you long for the rarest treasure, silence and shadow? Share your thought. It is in these reflections that we glimpse how much of civilization depends not on stone or steel, but on rhythm. Philosophy is often born from the sky. Under our single sun, we have imagined unity, singular truth, a source of order shining above the chaos of the world. But in a world with two suns, philosophy would not be about the one, it would be about the two, about balance, tension, and the endless dance of duality. Two suns in the sky would be a daily reminder that existence is not singular. Light itself would arrive from multiple directions, shadows crossing, reality layered. To live in such a world would be to feel duality written into the bones of experience. Every morning would begin with a lesson. Truth has more than one face. Power has more than one source. And harmony is forged not from uniformity, but from coexistence. Religions might root themselves in this symbolism. Where we imagine a single divine light, they might imagine two gods, one gentle, one fierce, one constant, one shifting. Devotion would not be about surrender to one authority, but about navigating between two. Pilgrims might journey to valleys where the suns align perfectly, believing such places to be holy, where harmony between opposites becomes visible. Philosophers would build entire traditions on these observations. Some might teach that life itself is dual, a balance of creation and destruction, joy and sorrow, abundance and scarcity. Others might argue that duality is illusion, that beyond the suns there's a hidden unity, a truth that can only be glimpsed when both are seen together. Still others might see the suns as metaphors for the human soul, with its conflicting desires and layered identities, always circling, never fully resolved. Art would carry this language. Painters could depict figures with twin shadows. Sculptors craft monuments with two faces. Poets write verses that hinge on paradox. Love as both fire and comfort. Wisdom as both clarity and uncertainty. The suns would not only illuminate the land, they would illuminate imagination, creating a culture fluent in dual meanings. Ethics, too, would shift. In our world, morality often seeks absolutes, right or wrong, truth or falsehood. In theirs, morality might seek balance. To act wisely would mean not choosing one extreme, but holding both in tension as the suns hold one another in their orbit. Justice could be imagined as dual light, ensuring that no voice, no perspective, no truth stands alone. Even the concept of time would carry philosophical weight. Two suns mean overlapping cycles, creating rhythms more complex than our simple day and year. To mark time would be to acknowledge not one pattern, but many, teaching that history itself is layered. Perhaps they would see destiny not as a line, but as a braid, strands weaving together, sometimes harmonizing, sometimes pulling apart. And in moments of eclipse, when one sun passed before the other, philosophy would turn mystical. Imagine the awe of watching the sky dim, not because day ends, but because two forces overlap, their light merging into strange colors, Such moments would inspire meditation on unity, on the fleeting alignment of opposites, on the possibility that duality hides a deeper truth. For individuals, the suns could mirror the inner life. One might represent passion, the other reason. One desire, the other duty. Living beneath them, people might speak of their own choices as alignments, moments when the two within them conflicted or came into harmony. Identity itself could be imagined not as singular, but as dual, a dance like the stars above. And yet, there would be longing. Just as our philosophers dream of plurality in a world of unity, theirs might dream of singularity in a world of duality. They might imagine a myth of the first sun, when light was whole, when the sky was simple. Perhaps this longing would inspire movements that sought clarity, purity, or return. In philosophy, as in life, we often desire what the heavens deny us. Pause now and imagine standing beneath that sky, two suns blazing, shadows stretching in different directions. Do you feel torn, pulled between lights, or do you feel expanded, alive in a world that reminds you daily that existence is richer than one perspective? If the thought stirs you, share it. Philosophy begins not in books, but in reflection, in the simple act of wondering beneath the sky. Technology is the story of adaptation written in tools. On our Earth, the cycle of day and night guided invention. Fire to extend the day, lamps to banish darkness, clocks to measure time. But under two suns, where darkness is rare and rhythms are strange, the entire arc of human innovation would shift. The first invention might not be fire, but shade. In a world bathed in constant brilliance, survival would demand tools to soften the sun's intensity. Early shelters could be woven canopies, caves lined with reflective surfaces, structures designed not to trap warmth, but to release it. The mastery of shadow would become humanity's first triumph. Agriculture would push technology further. With unstable climates, farming would require irrigation systems resilient to drought and flood, tools to store water, preserve food, and build shade over crops would be essential. Instead of chasing warmth as our ancestors did, their farmers would chase coolness, inventing ways to tame abundance without letting it scorch the harvest. The plow might still emerge, but alongside it, vast lattices of cloth or leaves stretched to diffuse the sun's relentless light. Science, too, would take a different path. Without visible stars, astronomy might be delayed, but engineering would flourish early. Managing heat would demand innovation. Reflective metals, storage vessels, underground chambers, metallurgy might progress quickly, driven by the need to craft tools that resist scorching conditions. Architecture would advance, not for beauty, but for survival, giving rise to entire cities, carved into cliffs or buried beneath the ground. Clocks would evolve differently. On Earth, sundials marked the hours, guided by the steady path of one sun. With two, time would be chaotic, shadows splitting and shifting. Instead, people might invent complex mechanical systems earlier, machines to reconcile the twin cycles into usable patterns. Calendars would be works of mathematics and astronomy combined, helping civilizations track alignments that governed farming, travel, and rest. And when science finally turned outward, telescopes would confront brilliance. The sky, washed in constant glow, would resist exploration. Yet human curiosity does not yield. Devices to block light, to filter wavelengths, to peer beyond glare would emerge. Perhaps they would invent lenses not for magnification first, but for dimming, dark glass, as sacred as fire was to us. From these humble beginnings, astronomy would bloom later, but burn with intensity as the revelation of galaxies, hidden for ages, electrified their imagination. Energy technology would follow its own path. On Earth, we harvest sunlight reluctantly, building panels to capture what we need. In a two-sun world, solar energy would be overwhelming, a torrent waiting to be harnessed. Civilization could leap quickly into solar power, constructing vast fields of collectors, not to stretch scarce energy, but to tame abundance. Their greatest challenge would not be scarcity, but storage. How to save what is gathered during the double blaze and release it during intervals of reprieve. Batteries, reservoirs, and thermal systems could define their technological age. Medicine would adapt to new pressures. Radiation from two suns might strain bodies, pushing early healers to discover protective balms, clothing, and diets that countered illness. Over generations, medical science could grow not from treating wounds of war, but from treating wounds of light. Sun sickness, burns, and exhaustion would drive innovation, producing remedies long before our own advances in biology. Even exploration would change. On our Earth, night guided sailors by stars. On theirs, constant light would drive explorers to rely on compasses, maps, and instruments, advancing navigation earlier. Great journeys would be launched not to find food in winter, but to find gentler climates, valleys of shadow, oceans where storms were kinder. Entire migrations might be spurred by celestial cycles, pushing societies to invent ships, caravans, and flying machines sooner than we did. Eventually, technology would lift their gaze beyond their world. Space travel might emerge not from competition or curiosity alone, but from necessity. Two suns mean volatile conditions, radiation storms, shifting climates, unpredictable flares. The drive to escape, to seek stability elsewhere, could come earlier, pushing them toward rockets, shields, and colonies before they fully mastered their own planet. Pause and picture such a society. Cities gleaming with reflective towers, underground chambers humming with stored energy, telescopes hidden in valleys where the sun's glare is weakest. Their scientists peer into the sky, finally piercing the veil of light to glimpse galaxies. Their poets stand beside them, writing verses about infinite worlds revealed. Technology is not just invention, it is survival, curiosity, and wonder braided together under fire. If you lived beneath two suns, what would you invent first? A machine for shade, a tool for food, or a window into the stars? Share your thought. It may be small, but it carries the same spark that has always guided us. The will to adapt, to imagine, to create. Power is not only about strength, it is about control of rhythm. Who works when, who eats when, who rests when. On Earth, the steady alternation of day and night created stable cycles, shaping laws, economies, and governments. But under two suns, where cycles fracture and the sky resists order, politics itself would take a different path. In such a world, the first power would be control of shade. A chieftain or leader would not be the strongest warrior, but the one who owned caves, groves, or valleys hidden from brilliance. Authority might rest in those who could provide relief, shade for the body, darkness for the mind. To rule would be to grant rest, and rebellion would spark not when food was scarce, but when shade was denied. As settlements grew, politics would orbit around managing cycles of abundance and famine. When the suns aligned to scorch the land, leaders would be tested. Could they ration water, distribute grain, preserve the weak? And when the light softened, allowing harvests to flourish, leaders would be celebrated for feasts, festivals, and generosity. Governance would not be abstract, but visceral, tied to the pulse of the sky itself. Religious authority would intertwine with politics. Priests who could read the motions of the suns would hold immense influence. Their predictions of alignment would guide planting, travel, and trade. In many societies, rulers and priests might merge into one. Philosopher kings, whose legitimacy came not from divine right, but from celestial knowledge. The ability to interpret the heavens would be both science and power. Conflicts would often erupt over geography. Valleys shaded by mountains, rivers cooled by terrain, coastlines tempered by winds. These would be the treasure maps of politics. Wars might not be fought for expansion alone, but for specific landscapes where survival was possible. Just as oil shaped our modern geopolitics, geography of shadow could shape theirs. Empires would rise where land offered balance, and collapse where suns proved merciless. Diplomacy would also take new forms. In our history, treaties often marked seasons of peace and war. In theirs, treaties might align with celestial cycles. Alliances could be forged during times of double blaze, when cooperation was vital for survival, then dissolve during cooler intervals. Festivals of alignment might double as councils, where leaders negotiated under skies that demanded compromise. Economies, too, would be political instruments. Wealth would not simply be gold or grain, but control of cooling technologies, reservoirs, shaded markets, storage systems. Guilds of builders, artisans of shade, and engineers of water would wield political clout, their innovations deciding which city thrived and which withered. Political power might shift rapidly, flowing toward those who could harness abundance and shield against excess. And what of justice? In our world, law often arises from notions of fairness and punishment. In theirs, law might be deeply tied to balance. A crime could be seen not only as harm to another, but as disturbance of a fragile equilibrium. Courts might aim less to punish than to restore harmony, reflecting the philosophy of dual suns, that survival depends not on dominance, but on maintaining balance in community. Over centuries, systems of governance would diverge. Some cultures might centralize power, creating monarchies where a single ruler embodies the authority of both suns. Others might embrace councils, reflecting the duality of the sky, believing no one voice can rule alone. Democracies could emerge earlier, born from the need to balance many perspectives in a world where extremes always threaten. Revolution, too, would have its rhythm. On Earth, people rose when hunger was unbearable. On their Earth, uprisings might come during cycles of merciless heat, when suffering was universal. Songs of rebellion could be filled with imagery, fire and shadow, demanding leaders who could grant relief. The rallying cry might not be bread and land, but shade and water. In modern times, politics under two suns might be shaped by global cooperation. Climate would be unstable, resources uneven, crises frequent. Nations could not stand alone. Organizations might form not just for trade or defense, but for planetary survival, pooling technologies to store energy build shelters, and predict celestial alignments. Where our world struggles with unity, theirs might learn earlier that survival itself is political, and politics itself is planetary. Pause and picture a parliament beneath twin suns. Debates rage over how to share water during a cycle of blaze. Engineers present plans for underground cities. Priests warn of alignments to come. Outside, people gather in shaded plazas, chanting for relief, demanding balance. It is politics as old as humanity, yet written in the fire of two skies. If you were there, where would you stand? Would you seek power to command shade, or lend your voice to balance? Share your reflection, for in imagining politics under twin suns, we glimpse our own struggles, our need not just to rule, but to harmonize. Culture is memory made visible. It carries not only what people endure, but how they interpret it through song, painting, poetry, and ritual. On our earth, the single sun and the contrast of night shaped every metaphor we use. Dawn as hope, dusk as ending, stars as eternity. But under two suns, the symbols of art would be entirely different, sculpted by a sky that never truly darkens. Music, for example, might mirror the rhythm of twin light. Songs could be layered with dual melodies, weaving in and out like suns orbiting. Harmonies might hold tension, never resolving into simple chords, echoing the perpetual balance of two forces. Instruments could be designed to mimic solar cycles, drums resonating like the pulsing heat, flutes whispering like shifting winds between flares. Performances might be held in shaded plazas, the audience cloaked in veils, their ears turned not to silence, but to layered brilliance transformed into sound. Poetry would reach for new imagery. Where we speak of light and dark, they might speak of greater and lesser blaze. Metaphors for longing could draw from shadows that split in two directions. Lovers described not as star-crossed, but as sun-crossed, fated to chase one another's brilliance. Epic tales would liken heroes to twin suns themselves, radiant, in conflict, yet bound to one another by cosmic dance. Painting and sculpture would glow with new palettes. Artists might grind reflective minerals into pigments, creating works that shimmer under light. Canvases could be designed not to absorb, but to scatter, colors shifting as viewers move. Statues might cast intentional double shadows, symbolizing complexity and duality. Where our art seeks contrast between light and dark, theirs would seek harmony with an endless glow. Architecture itself would be art, buildings gleaming white, designed with symmetry to echo celestial orbits. Towers aligned so that during rare alignments of suns, their shadows converge in patterns across plazas. Cities could be living artworks, their designs celebrating the geometry of dual suns, turning survival into aesthetic. Mythology would infuse all forms of expression. In stories, the suns might be portrayed as siblings, rivals locked in eternal competition, or lovers chasing one another across the sky. Festivals might dramatize these myths with dance, two circles of performers weaving in spirals, their movements colliding and separating, echoing celestial motion. Children raised in such culture would not imagine the sky as backdrop, but as stage, where every act of creation reflects dual fire above. Even language would shimmer differently. Words for shadow might carry sacred weight, invoked as metaphors for intimacy, mystery, or grace. Proverbs could describe wisdom not as clarity, but as walking between suns, to describe a balanced person might be to say they are twin-lit, holding two truths without contradiction. The very structure of thought would grow around metaphors of duality. Literature might carry melancholy for what is rare. In our world, poets write of longing for dawn. In theirs, they might long for darkness. A simple cave could be described in verse as sanctuary, a place where thought ripens in coolness. Lovers might pledge not eternal light, but the gift of shadow, promising each other rest beneath brilliance. Art would also serve as resistance. When life is dictated by fire, to paint shadow, to sing of quiet, to carve coolness into stone, would be acts of defiance. Underground galleries might bloom, their walls painted with images of imagined night skies, thousands of stars, moons unknown, galaxies glittering. These dreams of darkness could inspire revolutions of spirit, reminding people that art is not only reflection, but rebellion. And yet, joy would also thrive. Festivals might erupt during rare alignments when light softens, with music, color, and dance filling streets. Children would play with mirrors, scattering beams into rainbows, laughter itself becoming art. In this culture, celebration would not be escape, but survival. A way of saying, yes, the world is harsh, but we transform it into meaning. Pause now and picture it. A plaza glowing beneath two suns, dancers weaving in circles, musicians layering melodies that echo celestial rhythm, walls shimmering with pigments that scatter brilliance. In that moment, you are not only surviving, but participating in a culture that has made endurance into beauty. If you could create art under such a sky, what would you choose? A song, a poem, a painting of impossible shadows? Share your thought. It reminds us that no matter the sky above, humans will always turn existence into expression. Science fiction is the mirror of possibility. On our Earth, stories of stars and distant worlds were born because night revealed infinity above us. Writers and dreamers looked into darkness and imagined ships, empires, and futures spread across galaxies. But under two suns, where stars are hidden, the imagination of space would rise differently, shaped less by infinity, more by fire. Children growing beneath twin suns might not dream of stars. They would dream of shadow. Their earliest tales of adventure might be journeys into caverns or quests across oceans searching for twilight. But once technology revealed the galaxies beyond the glare, imagination would explode. A civilization that had lived in near blindness would suddenly see not only stars, but endless worlds. The shock of discovery would fuel a science fiction tradition unlike any other. Stories born not from gradual curiosity, but from revelation. Their myths might merge seamlessly with science fiction. If their suns were seen as siblings or lovers, then distant stars could be imagined as entire families of celestial beings. Space travel might be written not as conquest, but as pilgrimage, journeys to meet cousins of their suns, to discover whether other worlds share their dual rhythm. Fiction would not separate from religion. It would extend it, weaving spiritual awe into technological vision. Starships in their imagination might not be sleek vessels of night, but radiant arcs designed to carry shade. Writers could describe ships with reflective sails, shimmering against glare, or habitats that simulate darkness for weary travelers. Where our fiction glorifies engines and speed, theirs might glorify balance, craft that carry both light and shadow, ensuring passengers remain whole. Philosophical science fiction would flourish, Living under dual suns teaches that truth has many faces. Their stories might explore civilizations with conflicting philosophies, twin empires locked in orbit, or beings split between two natures. Aliens could be written as embodiments of duality, creatures with two minds, two hearts, or two shadows. Conflict in their fiction would rarely be about annihilation, but about coexistence, about the struggle to harmonize opposing forces. Even dystopia would take on new tones. On Earth, we fear endless darkness, nuclear winter, skies without light. Under two suns, dystopia might be imagined as endless blaze, planets where both suns draw closer, scorching everything, civilizations consumed by abundance rather than scarcity. Their nightmare would not be absence, but excess. Writers might warn of arrogance in harnessing the sun's power, telling cautionary tales of worlds blinded by their own brilliance. Utopia, on the other hand, could be envisioned as worlds where duality is perfectly balanced. Stories might describe planets where suns align just enough to create steady rhythms, where agriculture thrives without famine, where societies rest without fear. Such tales would not simply describe paradise, but express longing for a harmony their own world rarely grants. As technology advanced, fiction would inspire reality. Just as our science fiction drove space exploration, theirs would push towards solutions for managing light. Engineers might draw from novels to build star shades in orbit, blocking excess radiation. Architects might design habitats modeled after fictional worlds, where simulated darkness allows deeper rest. Fiction would not only entertain, it would become blueprint. Cosmology, too, would shift. Our thinkers ponder whether we are alone. Theirs would ponder whether duality is universal. Do other stars have partners? Do other civilizations live in constant brilliance? Philosophers might argue that life itself requires balance between suns, and that civilizations like theirs are common. Others might insist they are rare, chosen, marked by cosmic duality. Science fiction would become a way to debate such questions. Each story, a hypothesis dressed in wonder. Pause and imagine reading one of their novels. The hero is not a lone explorer, but a pair of travelers, reflecting the sky above them. Two voices, two destinies, bound together. Their ship sails not into darkness, but into brilliance, shields raised against glare. Their quest is not conquest, but harmony, searching the cosmos for worlds where dual light gives life instead of taking it. Would you, living under two suns, dream of escape to darker skies? Or would you embrace the blaze, seeking to spread your dual heritage across the stars? Share your reflection, for in wondering how others dream, we remember that imagination itself is a kind of a light, shaping the worlds we may one day create. The mind is shaped by rhythm as much as the body. On Earth, our inner lives are guided by the cycle of day and night. The rising sun brings wakefulness. The falling night invites rest. Darkness is the canvas of dream, a sanctuary where thought untangles into story. But under two suns, where darkness is rare, what becomes of the human psyche? What becomes of dream? Sleep itself would be fractured. Without long nights, rest would arrive in shorter intervals, woven throughout the day. A child might nap in shaded courtyards. Adults drifting into sleep between cycles of labor. Elders resting when the suns dim only slightly. Dreams would be fragmented, shorter, perhaps stranger, emerging not from deep, uninterrupted night, but from brief escapes carved out of brilliance. Psychology would adapt. On our Earth, night provides separation from the demands of waking life, giving space for reflection. In a two-sun world, that separation would be harder to find. Minds might carry a constant undertone of vigilance, shaped by light that never relents. Anxiety could rise from the sense that rest is never complete, that the world itself refuses to pause. Yet resilience, too, would deepen. Generations raised in such conditions might learn to find calm not in silence, but within noise, not in darkness, but within glow. Dreams would take on new symbolism. Where our dreamscapes often feature light and shadow, theirs might feature coolness and blaze. A person might dream of walking through endless forests of shimmering leaves, seeking a patch of shadow that never comes. Others might dream of imagined night skies, fields of stars their ancestors had never seen, visions whispered by memory or longing. In such a culture, dreams of true darkness could be treasured, passed down as omens or visions of hidden truths. Philosophers and healers might treat dreams as sacred, rare gifts from the subconscious that glimpses the world beyond dual suns. Entire traditions of psychology could rise around guiding people through dreamscapes, interpreting visions of shade, flare, and eclipse. Therapies might not ask, "What do you fear?" but "Where do you find shadow?" For in a world without night, the dream becomes the only true darkness. Creativity would flow from these altered rhythms. Writers might draw inspiration from fractured rest, their imaginations sparking in bursts between naps. Painters could depict dreamscapes shimmering with surreal light, landscapes bending under brilliance. Musicians might compose lullabies designed for short cycles of rest, melodies brief yet calming, tailored to minds that drift quickly in and out of sleep. Even mental health itself would evolve differently. In our world, depression is sometimes linked with the absence of light. In theirs, the opposite might occur. Overexposure, leading to exhaustion, irritability, or despair. Healers could develop rituals of shadow, guided meditations in darkness, sensory deprivation chambers, even communal caves designed for shared silence. Darkness would be medicine, prescribed like we prescribe sunlight today. And what of altered states? In endless brilliance, trance might be sought through rhythm, drumming, chanting, dance, anything that creates inner night when outer night is absent. Hallucinogens, too, might play a central role, helping the mind escape light's grip to enter internal worlds. Mystics would describe visions not of ascending into brightness, but of descending into coolness, sinking into the shadow within. Pause now and picture yourself drifting into sleep beneath two suns. Your chamber is shaded, curtains layered thick, walls cooled by stone. Outside, brilliance still blazes, but within, your body surrenders. A dream begins. Perhaps you walk through a canyon where the suns are silent, hidden, and stars shine above for the first time. You awaken uncertain if it was vision or longing, but it lingers, reshaping your sense of self. In such a world, would you treasure dreams more deeply, knowing they are your only true darkness? Would you guard them, share them, build stories from them, share your reflection? It is in dreams, after all, that humanity learns not only to rest, but to imagine. To imagine Earth beneath two suns is to imagine humanity tested, reshaped, and yet enduring. Across these reflections of climate, biology, culture, and dream, one truth has remained constant. Wherever we are placed, however the sky is drawn, we find a way to live. Two suns would demand adaptation at every level, plants bending into strange colors, animals scattering light through reflective eyes, oceans pulsing with new currents. Yet within that adaptation lies a familiar story. Life persists. Evolution would not falter beneath brilliance. It would flourish, finding beauty even in extremes. Fields of crimson grass, seas glittering with mirrored fish, forests glowing with violet leaves. All these remind us that existence is not fragile, but inventive. Civilization too would endure. Farmers planting not by season, but by celestial rhythm. Builders carving homes into stone. Rulers measuring power, not in wealth, but in shade. Politics would rise and fall like the suns themselves, bending toward balance, sometimes breaking into conflict, but always shaped by the need to survive together. Religion would sanctify the dual sky. Art would turn duality into symbol, and communities would gather to transform harshness into celebration. The mind would change, but not collapse. Dreams would fracture, yet still carry meaning. Anxiety might grow, yet so would resilience. People would invent rituals of shadow, lullabies for short rest, therapies of silence. Even in brilliance, the human soul would carve its own night, and in imagination, in science fiction and philosophy, two suns would become more than physical. They would become metaphors for duality, for coexistence, for truth with more than one face. What makes this thought experiment powerful is not the suns themselves, but what they reveal about us. We adapt, we invent, we endure not only by resisting conditions, but by transforming them into culture, philosophy, and meaning. Where the world offers difficulty, we create art. Where it offers chaos, we build systems. Where it denies us stars, we dream them into being. Perhaps this is why the image of two suns feels so compelling, even to us who live beneath one. It is not only alien, it is a mirror of our own dualities. We carry within us fire and shadow, longing and fear, reason and desire. We too are dual, circling ourselves in endless rhythm. The sky with two suns would only remind us of what we already know, that existence is not singular, and that harmony is not found in erasing difference, but in learning to live with it. Pause for a moment and imagine standing in that world. Two suns burn above, their light overlapping into gold and crimson. Around you, forests shimmer with reflective leaves. Rivers glow with mirrored currents. Cities gleam with domes and shade. People move through the streets, resilient, creative, alive. It is not our Earth, but it could have been. And if it had been, we would still find wonder, still tell stories, still build lives worth living. If this vision stays with you, share it, for in imagining another Earth, we learn more about our own